This continued meeting of the Cambria Community Services District special meeting from December 4th. This meeting is continued, but we are going to still begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We do have a quorum, and I would like to address the fact that this is a continued meeting and that the public comment has already been received. Mr. Carmel, can you please give us the clear explanation of what I just said?
I thought you did quite well. At the meeting on the 4th, the board did close public comment. This is essentially a continuance of that meeting. It's an adjourned special meeting. So, and the agenda is identical, so there's no obligation to take public comment. Obviously, you have discretion if the board chooses to take it, but you don't have to.
All right, thank you. Is there any objection from any board members for us continuing from where we were on last Monday?
I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Which means, first thing I'm going to do is please silence your devices. If you have your phone with you, please make sure you put it to silent or turn it off so that we don't disrupt it. We aren't taking public comment today, but what we are going to be doing is we will be continuing with the making of motions for nominations for the position. First thing I would like to do is make sure that we know who all is here, and we will start with the reduced list, the 7 that had been selected by directors on last Monday, but none of the applicants has been eliminated entirely. We just want to make sure that we're focusing our time on where it makes the most sense. So that said, when you hear your name, raise your hand up and wave or stand up so that we can see that you're here. I'm just going to take attendance for the applicants. Dwayne Lee. Mark Harrier is here. Alan McKinnon. No Alan today. Jeff Walters. Karen Dean. Hi. David Pearson. Thank you. Brian Morrow. Okay. Steve Niffen. Alan Fields sent me an email saying that he would be here after work at 1. Tom Gray. Ron Cristando. He's out of town until Wednesday. Thank you, Mr. Farmer. And Dennis Perry.
Right here.
Dennis, thank you very much. All right. The purpose of today's meeting is to appoint somebody to fill the vacant seat of the Board of Directors. We have gotten quite a few more emails since the last meeting, and I appreciate the input from everybody in sending that information. There's a few things that I want to make sure that I'm clear about in going forward. That I don't think that any applicant who objects to our pursuit of the regular coastal development permit for the advanced water treatment plant is not likely to be selected. This has been a goal of the board for going on 4 years now. And I would suggest that if that is your position, you might want to say so now so that it's clear. And if you would like to be on the board, you should probably run in November. I'd also like to make it very clear that applicants who expect a regular CDP, coastal development permit, without compromise or conditions, and should also not expect to be appointed to the board. Our district has yet to show the level of competence that other agencies have told us we need to have in running this plant. To run it without restriction or close oversight we are not there yet. They are helping us, these agencies that are helping us through this permitting process, but we're not there yet. That position also ignores the reality of having nowhere to dispose of the brine waste created when the advanced water treatment plant is running, or the costs to operate the plant. In light of the fires down south, I want to make something very clear, and Mr. Gruber, if you would correct me if I'm wrong on this, our advanced water treatment plant does not provide any additional water for fighting fires. Is that true?
It's not a yes or no answer. In other words,
if there were a fire today, there would be no water from the advanced water treatment to fight that fire, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And emergencies are important to be able to address, and not having the advanced water treatment plant in place does put our water supply at more risk, as a fire would also put our water supply at risk. The issue about having enough water for fire is more about storage than it is about having the advanced water treatment plant. Director Berenger.
Just for clarification.
Please, I would like to make sure that it's clear.
That's assuming, of course, it wouldn't help today because it's not running. If it were running, however, and we were to deplete our storage, we would be able to recharge that storage in the following week or in anticipation of another fire. And of course, repurposing a 23-acre-foot pond would allow a vast amount of extra storage. So I'm just throwing that out. Is that true, Mr. Gruber?
And you're talking about repurposing the
Yes.
waste impoundment.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I could return to the scenario that allowed us to put that facility into operations in the first place. So we put that facility into operations because we did not essentially have a reliable source of water. Our wells were at an all-time low. And so as we look into the pattern that's evolving with this winter and the probability of precipitation and the wells continuing to drop, we could find ourselves in the same situation. So with that being said, if we were solely dependent upon the SWF for our water source, then in theory and from a practical standpoint, it would serve as a fire protection source of water, because that would be providing our reservoirs and our tanks with a potable water source. So if the San Simeon and the San Rosa wells were off, let's say, and we were running them at a minimum to augment the additional amount of water needed for the community from the sustainable water facility, then in theory you could say, from a practical standpoint, from an operational standpoint, that yes, the SWF serves the purpose of meeting fire protection needs. Currently, that is a true statement. No, right now it does not. But again, if you return to the scenario that under stage 3 that we were in, then it would be a very important component of providing the community with water, and also serving as a means and a mechanism to provide fire protection.
Which is why we're pursuing the regular development permit, so that we are able to use it.
Yes, ma'am.
And so time and cost are involved, but thank you for that clarification, because I think it's important for people to know that. At this time, are there any directors that would like to make any additional comments? Vice President Farmer.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that General Manager Gruber, he did say 2 words with regard to this issue we were just discussing, and he said in theory. So I just wanted to put that out there. And also, Director Beringer just stated that it's possible that in the future, if we in fact take what is now the impoundment basin Well, I'm right here in front of the microphone. So that made a difference? Well, okay. Thank you. Good, good. So what I was saying, Director Barringer just made a comment, if I'm not misquoting him, that if we were able to take where the impoundment basin is now and make that for water storage, that it would provide a vast, Director Barringer's word, a vast amount of water that would be available for water, providing water for the community, but also for fighting fire. That, as far as I know, hasn't even been planned yet. The amount of money that it's going to cost to repurpose the brine pond and have that added facility that will go with it is something that I would say probably is unaffordable at this time because we don't have the funds. So I'm just making that statement to clarify kind of what you said.
If you don't
Director
mind,
Barringer?
just to clarify, you made the assumption that the water was going to be used for portable water resource for the public. It isn't. Right? It doesn't cost anything to collect the rain once it's emptied. And CAL FIRE, when they're pulling water out of that 23 acre feet happens to represent about 10 times the amount of water we have in storage in our tanks. And it's not in theory. I suppose some people could say it's a theory that when we run the water plant and we re-inject the water back in there, it's going to take 2 months for us to use. That particular molecule may take 2 months to get to our production wells, but that particular molecule raises the level of the water in the aquifer, so it's immediately available as it's injected, making other waters available. Just to clarify. Thank you.
So whoever's appointed must see all the views of all and respect them. Cambrians don't come to their opinions out of nothing. They get information, and they hopefully make reasoned judgments to how they arrived where they are. All of us have differing opinions about what that might be.
So perhaps in the future we'll be able to actually come up with the facts with regard to what Mr. Director Barringer and I just discussed.
I think that's an important discussion to be having, and that's not what's on the agenda today. But it is the reason why I brought it up, considering all the fires down south and the fires that happened in Napa and Sonoma counties. I think at this time I would entertain a motion to nominate somebody who was on the short list. Do we need to list who those are? Or is our directors clear? Okay. Me too.
We're talking
Director Wharton?
We're talking about the candidates listed and then the ones with the check marks brought back for the second round? Thank you.
That is correct. Thank you for the clarification. So.
However, isn't it clear that even though someone may not be here, that according to our rule was that they had to be present, but there's no one on this list that, even though they don't have a check mark, that we couldn't be nominated.
That's true. Because we said we were going to, the reason we reduced the number was to focus on those applicants who at least one director would select as being somebody to join us on the board.
Okay. Now, I did review the videotape for the second time. Finished it just about an hour ago, much to my chagrin. I suppose other people do that too. And based upon what I saw and the discussions, I would like to renominate Tom Gray for the position of director.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
If I could offer a comment, and I can understand Director Barringer wanting to take this approach, I'm just going to offer the other option that since Mr. Gray and Mr. Lee were already considered and discussed, and the votes were 2-2, that perhaps before we return to them, that we consider the other applicants who weren't questioned last time. I'm not saying we need to do that since you've already proposed what you have and it's been seconded. I'm just offering that as an alternative.
All right, so it's been moved by Director Behringer and seconded by Director Wharton to nominate Tom Gray for the vacancy on the Board of Directors. Is there any further discussion? Director Behringer.
Just a little bit. One of the things that has occurred between the last meeting and this is that there were some people that actually spoke against Mr. Gray, and I believe that you took that as one of the reasons why you were reluctant to move forward, and I noticed that those have been refuted. What else? There was I think that's there's a group of other things as I made my notes, but that's the end of my comments for now.
Director Wharton.
Thank you. My support for Tom Gray as a board member stems from the fact that, much like myself, we have been unequivocal in our support of moving from EWS to an SWF facility, getting a conditional or a coastal development permit in place so that we can operate it within whatever restrictions have been placed upon it. Preferably, we have most of the control on ourselves to do that, to mitigate, keeping our aquifers at a healthy level so we don't have any saltwater intrusion. My stance has always been that out of the 5 major things surrounding the SWF, growth has been number 5 on my list. Health of our aquifers, keeping those in steady supply, not losing them to saltwater intrusion where we've got 20 to 25 years before we can recover that well for use. Allowing a consistent supply of water for our citizens. That was demonstrated in several emails to me. One in particular said that we are getting too old to move buckets of water around. And the fourth could be we have a business that relies on tourism. We need reasons for tourists to come here, and we need reasons for tourism to spend their money here in town to keep the town's citizens that work here in business, and so we don't shrivel up and become a ghost town. So I know Tom Gray has been the only candidate to reach out to me personally to state that he is unequivocally in support of a coastal development permit and moving towards the SWF and operating it within our control. Thank you.
President Rice.
Director Behringer.
One thing I also noticed when I went through the video is that maybe is a little bit of a surprise to me. Mr. Farmer thought that some of Tom's financial background and what he does, and it was acknowledged that he was a good communicator, and I believe that that's going to be very important, especially when it comes time to clarify issues, and his position was clarifying issues. I think he could write or help come up with positions that will mend if there is any continuing problem between our staff and coastal staff, or our staff and the Regional Water Control Board. I think he can help in that method. I know it's not a primary purpose, but it's something that he can do to help that. And I think that building the relationships not only with staff but with the executive committees of each of those departments, not only the Water Control Board but Coastal Commission staff, I think he's very erudite and would be able to make us successful a little more quickly. And that's the end of my comment.
Vice President Farmer.
I don't know if I should necessarily reply to what you just said, but I think, as I stated last week, my main concern was the fact that Mr. Gray helped to promote this facility that is doing, at this point in time, irreparable harm to the financial security of the district and the ratepayers of this community. I think it also is concerning to me that, as I said, while he states that he's extremely concerned about the deficits that would only get worse if ignored, that what it is that, like I said, that he promoted is more than anything causing the deficits that have continued. And I guess, you know, what I'm doing here right now, I'm not questioning his skills as a communicator and someone who has knowledge. I think I'm addressing his ability to use good judgment with regard to how he's participated in the process up until now. Thank you.
I will speak to one of the reasons I gave for not supporting appointment of Tom Gray, which is the allegations that were brought forward by a couple members of the community. Those allegations, almost irrelevant to me what they were, and I don't need to have them proved or disproved. My concern is that Mr. Gray's appointment would bring additional distraction because there are people that will come out and speak out against him, whether the allegations are true or not, which I believe is not the reason why. There's no reason why anybody coming up to the podium is telling us the truth, and I would like to believe that we can trust the people that speak to us, but we all have to take everything with a grain of salt. My concern is more with the distraction he presents in the form of folks in this town that would come out if he were appointed and continue to distract with allegations that then have to be looked into. I received an email from Mr. Gray asking to address those allegations and saying that he had worked with Monique to get information about the press release that was related to one of the comments, and it speaks to additional time that our staff is spending that doesn't need to be spent. And there have been plenty of allegations about me, about Vice President Farmer, about Director Wharton, and about you. And if you can't take an allegation or two from the public, true or not, I'm sorry, this is not an easy place to sit. You do have accusations all the time, whether they're true or not. And I think it's more about the distraction than if there was some impropriety or other several years ago. That doesn't make a difference to me. And I believe that on the issue related to the Presbyterian Church, we had a church elder that approached the mic and told us that allegation wasn't true at all. And I have no reason to not believe somebody who's an elder in a church where the incident supposedly happened. I think that Mr. Gray may know a lot about this district and especially the advanced water treatment plant. However, I don't think that his expertise in that area is the strongest argument to appoint him. We have Mr. Berenger, who was president during the year when we put the advanced water treatment plant into place. We pay $7,000 a month to an advocate named Dean Flores, whose purpose for being paid by this district is to get the regular development permit. We also have a general manager who's in charge of making sure that we go through this process and get it done. I think that there are other qualities that I am looking for to join this board that are not related to that advanced water treatment plant. And that's why I will continue to oppose appointing Mr. Gray to this board. Further comment? Director Berenger.
Yes, it's interesting that you feel that we've all been had people object to what we've done, and that's a distraction. And here we have someone who the people that made allegations If you've seen and I'm sure you've seen the refutation of that, just because we don't want somebody that's going to be, people are going to continue to put allegations against myself and yourself, perhaps. And so to use that as an excuse not to support Mr. Gray is very interesting, and it was clear that, as I watched the video, that there were biases that you had, and when I went through the video, I saw that almost everything, the only thing is the property tax, other than parcel tax, every single one of the things that I thought that you had some issue with, I thought were dealt with. Even I think that when Tom Gray went to the podium and was talking about the finances, and was continuing to describe to Director Farmer, or Vice President Farmer, the ways at which you have to have these funds, these individual wastewater treatment fund and a water treatment fund and a general fund. And I think Director Farmer was starting to get the idea that it's the wastewater fund that's so much in the red. And he didn't get he was trying to get the point across that the water fund isn't really that bad. And even because the bill, the water bill, and the thing, I don't know if Director Farmer has his water bill here, and I brought mine. And the EWS is funded on every month, even if it's running or not. So we have SWF water base charge and an SWF usage charge, and we have an operating charge. And on my bill, the operating charge is zero because it was in the middle of the summer and we weren't running it. But the water bills themselves, the rates, do support paying the loan and do support some minimal amount of upkeep of the plant. And when it runs, then we get an operating charge, and that is supposed to offset the cost of running the plant. So when you check your bill, you might want to take a look at that and see that, in fact, it is funded. It's the wastewater bill that we're trying to fund, that we're trying to support, and I think Mr. Gray understands that. He's the one that gave the tour to most of the people about the plant. His knowledge of the plant starting day one is very, very important. And I don't think we should wait till July to have his services on the board. So I continue to support and will continue to support Tom Gray.
I'd like to call the question. The motion is to appoint Tom Gray to the Board of Directors, made by Director Behringer, seconded by Director Wharton.
Director Behringer?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Vice President Farmer?
No.
President Rice?
No. Thank you. The vote is 2-2. That ties, and the motion fails. Is there a motion? Vice President Farmer?
Well, it appears since we're returning back to what happened last week, I'm going to propose that we offer up a nomination to be placed on this board, the name of Dwayne Lee.
I would second that motion. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily want to, repeat what I said last week. With regard to Dwayne's background in finance, having been a successful businessman in the past, being a president of the Chamber of Commerce, being involved with Rotary, being involved with other volunteer work that he did where he used to live in Texas, having moved here, being involved in other volunteer work with Green Space, the Discovery Center, being intimately involved with what is happening at the district, becoming very knowledgeable before he ran last time. And I say, some people might quarrel with the fact that, well, he came in fifth and we only had 3 openings, but I think the fact that with regard to name recognition, everyone else that ran, who had lived here much longer, had far more name recognition. And I believe that if people had known Dwayne better at that time, that he would receive more votes. As it well, he did very well. last week when he got up and spoke at length with regard to the questions that were being asked of him. I don't think anybody could have walked away without being impressed with regard to his presence of mind, his ability to think through the issues, and to come up with very thoughtful conclusions with regard to what was being discussed. I'm a little bit reluctant to ask this question, but I believe that Director Barringer and Mr. Lee got together yesterday and had a conversation for about an hour. So perhaps I could question Director Barringer as to how he felt about Mr. Lee, since you've been kind of adverse to, appointing him to the point where you've never even given him a compliment with regard to the qualities that he. It's not funny. It's not funny. The man got up and spoke last time. He's shown his commitment to this community by running for office, by attending meetings, and yet you didn't even have the courtesy to give him one compliment when he presented himself last time. It's not funny. So, what I'd like to ask once again is, you met with Mr. Lee yesterday. I would like to know what your feelings are about him now and what it is about Mr. Lee that you don't find acceptable enough to vote him to be a director on the board.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought I complimented every single director person that applied, and if I didn't, I failed to compliment him directly on that. I apologize. I do think that he made a reasonable presentation. And yes, I had an opportunity to talk to him, but I've had an opportunity to talk to other folks too. It's clear that conditions remain. He's a nice guy, and he probably could come up to speed. But he has it's clear that the support base that he has, even if he tries to disavow himself of having that support base, it's clear that there's people that are against this project to the point where they would like to have it removed, and that includes you, Mr. Farmer. And you have
Please
said
let
often,
Director Barringer finish, and then you will have your time to respond.
over and over
Please.
again, you want to stop spending any money on that project, and and correct me if I'm wrong. Continuing project, even though it's not running, we are.
Well, hold on. There's a. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Let's
Okay.
keep this
we're
restricted
supposed to be talking about Mr.
the
Lee.
candidates.
Okay, let me talk about
Okay.
Mr. Lee. Nice fella, but I tend to think that compared to hitting the road running, like Mr. Gray would, Tom Gray knows more about the project. Yes, Mr. Lee could learn some. I don't think, as much as you may not like the fact that Tom Gray supported the project at the time, he wasn't really an advocate. He was just explaining what was going on. He didn't vote for or take the plans and run with them, or he wasn't a promoter of the project. He was a describer of what was going on with the contractor and with the construction of the project.
Can we discuss Mr. Lee?
And I think Mr. Lee
Please.
is not as capable at this time, and Tom Gray is more appropriate for this position. In talking to Mr. Lee, I do think that he learned some things that were going on, but I believe he continues to have some misconceptions, and I'm not going to be supporting Mr. Lee.
So first, I would like to say I believe that you may have mischaracterized Mr. Lee's attempt to disassociate himself with those who support him. I don't believe that that's the case, but I would ask Mr. Lee to respond to that if he would like. He is not required to, but on my understanding, and mine alone, I can't say what he's thinking, is that I don't think that he's tried to dissociate himself from anybody who's supported him. And if the concern is about who supports him, the same thing could be said for virtually any of us, including those of us already on the board. So I just on that front. Now, one of the things that happens when we become divided and have an us and them mentality is it makes it harder for us to come to a position where we can see that we have things in common and that we have common goals for this district, for this town, and for what we want to see in a director. It is painfully clear, probably to everybody in this room and everybody watching this meeting, that there are some minds that are set in a certain way, and I'm not excluding myself from that. I have spent the last week doing everything that I can to question why I might have a certain position, which is the only way to come to a different decision when presented with essentially the same set of arguments and the same set of folks to be on the board. And I tried actually a bunch of different ways to look and see if there were things that I could find why I would support somebody, or things that I would find that I wouldn't support somebody that I did support. I still have come to the conclusion that I believe I would put the knowledge of that Mr. Lee exhibited at the last meeting up against anybody on the board currently relating to the advanced water treatment plant and the way that it operates. I also think that there is something to, I mean, I'm a fan, and I will admit I am biased. It probably did show at the meeting, because I do think that Mr. Lee would be a very good choice for director. I'm a fan, and even I was impressed at what he did at the last meeting and the way he talked about the advanced water treatment plant and the way it operates and his understanding of it. I'm prone to want to be impressed, but I was surprised that he was so knowledgeable. That speaks to the fact that he clearly has done some additional learning since even the last time he applied. I think it might be a difficult decision for directors who don't already support Mr. Lee, but I would posit that there have been difficult decisions made all along, and there will always be difficult decisions, and I made one when we appointed Director Wharton. I would ask that you consider maybe there's an additional question or assurance that you would like to have. I think that we require someone on this board with finesse and integrity. I think that the folks that are worried that we may not get a regular coastal development permit, or that this plant might turn into a giant brick that we owe money on, I think those concerns are valid and will not be swept away just by having somebody who unquestioningly supports the advanced water treatment plant permitting. I think we might see some level of reduction in the opposition to the plant and the concerns if we were to appoint somebody that just blindly supports that project, rather than asking the important questions about how does that project fit into our water supply. Because I'll tell you right now, the advanced water treatment plant's not going away. There's majority of this board that thinks that it needs to stay, and one person being appointed is not going to change that. What could change is the kind of dialogue that we have, which I think is an important thing for this board to consider. If we were to choose somebody that has been working for the district for years, like Mr. Gray, I don't think we get a change in the discussion that's happening at the board. I also don't think that appointing Mr. Lee changes the direction that we're already headed in. We've laid the track, we're on the train, we're not getting off. I don't think a single person appointed to this board makes a difference in that. It's folly to believe that we would be able to somehow find the money to remove the plant and restore the property to what it was before the plant was built, when we don't even have the money to help remediate the problems with the brine pond. So if we don't have money to fix it so it works, we don't have money to take it out and restore the environment. It's just not realistic, and it's folly to do things that would create obstacles to us having a regular development permit, which I believe when we have that regular development permit, it means that those agencies who are in charge of regulating us believe that this district can operate that plant in a way that is responsible for our community and for the environment and habitat in which we live. I would urge you to please reconsider, because I believe that Dwayne Lee is the best person for this position.
Can I make a statement, please?
Director Wharton had his light on first.
I don't believe so. And I think
Vice President Farmer, I'm the president.
Go ahead, Vice President. I'll yield the floor to you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Everybody's going to look at me that doesn't necessarily support me and say, oh, Mr. Farmer's being picky. My light was on before, okay? However,
and I'm the president.
So I will yield to and Mr. Wharton. Thank you.
So my opposition in Mr. Lee lies in the statement, and I do need to make a correction to the December 4th meeting where I attributed a statement to Dwayne Lee, and that statement read, if you want to live here, then buy a home and move. That statement, when I went back and reviewed the video from the September 29th candidate forum, that comment was attributed to Mr. Tom Kirky. My apologies, Dwayne. What I should have attributed to you was the statement that you agreed with Tom. If somebody wants to live here, it's not like we are shutting them out. There's plenty of homes for sale, and they can always take a home, and if they don't like it, rebuild it, remodel it. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm looking for a candidate that's going to be unequivocal in their support for the SWF. This shows me would stick his finger in there and see which way the wind's blowing.
Vice President Farmer.
Well, maybe I'm interpreting that statement differently, but I believe and I will say this much, having been at that forum and participated in it, I believe the intention and the way the comment was delivered at the podium by Mr. Kirky and Mr. Lee's agreement with that statement were done in a totally different fashion. That would be the best way to describe it. And even I found Mr. Kirky's statement of it, a little bit, how could I say it, acrimonious or accusatory, whatever you want to call it, because Tom can be that way. He's kind of blunt and he's Tom. I don't believe that was Dwayne's intent. He was just saying, if you wish to move here, you can buy a home here, and if you wish to remodel it, you can do that too. But getting back to a more important issue, just like the finances of this community are being overwhelmed by this facility that isn't running, that we've spent almost $2 million on this past year, this conversation about Mr. Lee is mainly revolving around, does he support pursuing the emergency water facility or doesn't he? And does he have the qualifications to do so? Well, I think if you were to ask most people in this community what concerns them, and you told them the facts about what's going on, you'd probably find that they're concerned about the fact that, well, we don't have the money to address water storage and water delivery and repairing the much-needed infrastructure at the wastewater facility because of this facility that we need to pursue at all costs, to the point where it's what, like I said, has consumed this conversation regarding Mr. Lee. I think we should probably ask about what is Mr. Lee's concerned about all of the issues, and not just what I just said, water and wastewater, but let's just say the performance of our general manager, the performance of our chief engineer. These are questions that I think a lot of people in this community are concerned about. And the fact that we are myopically looking at one item, and that's the only way that you are defining the qualities of a person that needs to be on this board, well, that's your business.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Motion. Yes, Mr. Lee. I think that is, as long as it's,
I don't have any.
but we did speak for interpreting his thoughts. I think it is entirely appropriate. I don't believe that we did that with Mr. Gray. So I really want to be fair.
Will we give Mr. Gray equal time if he so desires?
I would like to hear from Mr. Lee.
Sure, I know, I agree, but before we
Did we, I don't believe that we were putting thoughts into his head or words into his mouth.
We were the reasoning that I gave for preferring Mr. Gray more, all of us got a chance to hear it. If we only get to question Dwayne Lee,
I think he's just responding to things that, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Fine.
We can object to that. I mean, I want to be fair. I really.
Yeah, I do. Without having another vote for Tom Gray and having Tom Gray be able to address things.
Well, please, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a board meeting. I would appreciate it if you please respect the process. And one of the things about this process is we are trying to be fair. I believe there was a fair amount of discussion about what Mr. Lee thinks or says about something, and we were putting words in his mouth. If we did the same with Mr. Gray, we will do that. We will deal with that. For right now, the motion on the floor is related to Mr. Lee.
Okay. First, I would like to address...
You're going to have, just so you know, you have 3 minutes. I know it's not very much time.
Okay. I'd like to address Director Behringer's statement about the association that I would have with my supporters. You know, I appreciate all of my supporters, but that doesn't necessarily say that I agree with everything that they say or with every position they make. Matter of fact, I've had some very lively discussions with some of my supporters because some of them are basically for no growth whatsoever, immovable on that, no matter what the water supply situation is. I do not hold that particular view. You know, I say that, yes, eventually, whenever we get the proper amount of facilities that can adequately take care of that, then we can have growth. So I never had a single supporter that supported me financially or otherwise that came up to me and said, okay, you know, here's a check for whatever amount. Now, you be sure and vote this way or that way. They didn't. They know that I'm not that way. I'm not a rubber stamp. I would not be a rubber stamp for this board. I would take information, process it, and make up my own decision at the time as to what's best for the ratepayers and the taxpayers of Cambria. Director Horton, I would like to address your concern. You know, last Monday I was asked a question by you concerning the statement that I made 14 months ago at the forum. The question had to do with the water wait list and buying a home in Cambria. and I think we've gone over that. You know, I did tell you that no, I did not make that statement, that was made by Tom Kirky, and after reviewing the video, I did in part agree and make that statement. I found the video and reviewed it and did. And for that, I want to say Director Wharton was correct. I did make that statement. So for my lapse in memory, and it was a lapse in memory, it wasn't anything that I did intentionally, because I would much have rather done it that way then than to come up here and do this way. But I sincerely extend my sincere apology to you for telling you, no, I did not make that statement. The two statements were similar. However, Tom, and I quote, "I'm not sure if they have any legal obligation to the people on the wait list. If you want to live in Cambria, there's 72 homes, so on and so forth," end of quote. What I said following that statement was, I agree with Tom. If someone wants to live here, it's not like we're shutting them out. There's plenty of homes for sale, and they can always,
please wrap up your comments.
buy one. So I'll admit, I should have said that I agree in part with what Tom said, because I would never knowingly render a legal opinion on that, because I'm not a lawyer.
Thank
So
you, Mr. Lee.
I hope that clears that up, and I did not stick my finger and catch the wind to see which way that I needed to go on that. I would never do that.
Thank you for your comments. And I would like to compliment Director Wharton for going and reviewing the tape and for correcting the record, and for Mr. Lee actually doing some homework and doing the same. I think that speaks volumes to what directors can and should be doing in terms of having discussion about facts. Director Berenger?
Right, and Mr. Gray did the same as far as refuting several things that were on his record, and I hope that you no longer hold him, prejudice him because some people spoke against him.
I think we have called the question, yes?
Vice President Farmer?
Yes.
President Rice?
Yes.
Director Berenger?
No.
Director Wharton?
No.
All right. Another motion would be in order.
For the record, I don't have any other nominations to make at this time.
Thank you, Director Berenger. Are there any nominations? Director Wharton?
I will like to state also, I have no further nominations.
Vice President Farmer?
Yeah. You gentlemen chose Mark Harrier, David Pearson, and Tom Gray. Well, what about these other two people that are sitting in the audience? So you also chose Ron Cristando, who unfortunately can't be here today. So why aren't you nominating one of these other two people that you chose? One of these other two people that are here that you chose?
I think that's a reasonable question.
Yes, I see no one
Director
better.
Berenger.
I see no one better than Tom Gray. And why would someone want to have something that somebody that's third or fourth or fifth down the line? And the community, all of the community spoke to only three people: Karen Dean, Dwayne Lee, and Tom Gray. Why in heaven's name would we try and find an also-ran?
Because we tie on everybody else.
There you go.
Can I make it? You just said, just a moment, please. All of the community.
Vice President Farmer?
Yes, thank you.
I'm happy to acknowledge you. I just want to make sure that we stay within the lines and don't get out of hand. Thank you.
Okay. All of the community, Director Berenger?
All of the community comments on emails and comments at the board. Okay, so I stand corrected.
Thank you.
Did you have something further, Vice President Farmer?
I just, once again, since we are deadlocked right here at 2 and 2, I would like to encourage the other gentlemen, since they proposed Tom Gray, we proposed Dwayne Lee. So I think it's only fair that they now propose one of the applicants that they chose. I mean, it seems to me a very, very reasonable request.
But Director Wharton.
One of the things that I've, due to receiving a lot of the community support emails, conversations, and text messages for support for the three candidates that Director Behringer had noted, Tom Gray, Dwayne Lee, and Karen Dean, I have to think, as now that I'm on the board, do I represent a small populace or do I represent the entire community? Representing the entire community takes a broader view. Looking at the percentage of emails, whether it was a coordinated campaign or whether it was somebody coming out and supporting them, whether it was before Tom Gray had actually applied for the position, is irrelevant, in my opinion. Tom may have had casual conversations with his friends. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I've picked up my application. I'm filling it out. What do you think about that? If they chose to write an email, that's not a strike against Tom Gray. I would have thought that after my appointment that 100 was going to be the floor of the amount of emails coming in. We were going to receive much more. But with the community support that I've gathered, that's been put in front of me, when an overwhelming amount of that supports one candidate, and you even said to you in there, if Tom Gray is so, President Rice, you said that if Tom Gray is so popular, why don't you run? We have two very popular candidates. Let them run. We can operate as a 4-person board for 6 months. There's a minimal cost for the special election to dovetail onto the California primaries in June 5th. We will meet all the statutory regulations that we need to do, the 130 days to call an election. An estimate is $10,000 to $20,000 for an election, not something in the mid-6 figures, like the word that's been bandied about. Bruce Gibson spoke to me, and he sent me a message saying a cost of this election would be in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, dependent on what we wanted to do as a district. So if these two candidates are very popular, and if they're dividing this board this much, I say let them run.
Vice President Farmer.
I don't think the candidates are dividing this board. It's not the candidates who are dividing this board. And before we have a special election, the choice would go to the Board of Supervisors.
We can declare an election to be.
Wow. Well,
path
I'm just
forward.
going to make a suggestion that before we go down that road, that Directors Wharton and Behringer nominate somebody else on their list to be discussed at this meeting. I think if it doesn't go any further, the members of this community, the ones here, the ones at home watching this live, and the ones who will read about this in the newspaper will wonder, well, who have we elected? And why are they making these really bizarre decisions? And why aren't they just following through on what seems to be a very logical process? That's my statement.
The same statement could be made of Director Behringer's night candidate of Tom Gray to the two of you. So it's clearly we're divided. I see it as we have a clear number one in my mind. And to step down to 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, I don't think that's appropriate.
I find it unfortunate that you are essentially, at least somewhat, if I was an applicant, I would feel a bit insulted. Because I think these folks came forward in good faith, and I think there are 10 other people that could be nominated, and at this time, I nominate Dennis Perry as a member of this board.
Can I make a brief comment?
Once
Please.
either it needs to have a second or die, and then because there's a motion on the table.
I would first like to make a comment that
If there's no second,
No,
then it dies for lack of second.
I would first like to make a comment that an allusion was made to the fact that, well, we don't want to take, second or third or fourth or fifth or whatever. I would just like to remind whoever is out there listening that I came in third in the election. So I guess that implies that, well, the first two people in front of me were more qualified. We're going to do a better job, and that's why they got more votes. So the idea that, well, we're going to choose somebody that isn't our first choice, therefore, gee, I'm not going to find them satisfactory. I don't. I'm just saying. I'm just using an example of the fact that just because somebody isn't first choice, so to speak, doesn't mean that they don't have the knowledge or the integrity or the love of this community as part of what makes them want to be on this board. Thank you.
I move that we appoint Dennis Perry to this board. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. I would like to speak directly to Mr. Perry's application, which was very well written description of his vision for Cambria in different, even it separated by the particular department or responsibility or authority that this district has. Does he have the background of Mr. Gray being involved in the advanced water treatment plant? No. Has he been here decades? No. Those things might be good qualities. His application begins on page 46. I was so impressed with this application the moment that I read it, and he can probably speak to this if he needs to. I called him right away because I thought, hey, here's somebody that understands we have difficulties and has a further vision for this town that isn't myopic in focus. And again, I would like to submit that this district is not in danger of somehow suddenly changing course on that advanced water treatment plant and the permitting. I would submit that anybody that were to join this board that had the intention of trying to remove that plant should say so now and should drop out. I think that's the one place where I'm not yet sure that I know what Mr. Perry's position relating to the support of the plant. But again, I would submit Director Berenger and Director Wharton are clearly strongly in support of that plant. And I have shown my support for this plant in the hours and hours of time that I have spent this year attempting to deal with the impoundment basin issues, deal with getting the EIR finally to the board and approved, building relationships with the Coastal Commission and the county. And I think that in my actions I have shown there is no way that it makes any sense to do anything other than make sure that this district is both able to use that plant in terms of our capacity and resources, whether that's money or human capital, and that we need to have this permitting done, because until we do, we will continue to have issues cropping up right and left. I would hope that directors had time to read through Mr. Perry's application, and I would ask Vice President Farmer if you have any comments that you'd like to make to your second on that.
I think one of the things that impressed me with Mr. Perry, well, first off, he did take the time after wishing to be involved in the process the first time that he actually attended one of my table talk gatherings at the Redwood Center and participated in a very thoughtful fashion. We've also spoken on the phone. I think as he remarks in his application here, one of the things he wants to do is help restore, well, excuse me, he says restore trust. I guess I could say perhaps create a sense of trust. It might be for the first time, but create a sense of trust with regard to the operation of the board and perhaps even the district as a whole. He's also in favor of greater community involvement, standing committees, building a bond between the citizenry of this community, the board, and the district. He also has expressed his concern about water and wastewater. And this is, as I said, this seems to be what is being ignored in conversations that we're having. And this is something that I think all Cambrians are concerned about. And these are issues that he's addressed in his application, his concern about especially wastewater, and they need to upgrade the sewer plant. And I like what he says here at the end. We need to have 21st century affordable solutions. And he says we have them right here in front of us if we just look at them and expand and use the resources we already have available to us. And I think the fact that he is open-minded and hopes to be forward-looking is how we address the very important, let's say, infrastructure, environmental, and financial issues that exist in this community. And like I say, I feel like he might not necessarily be as knowledgeable as some of the other applicants, but it's his intent and what he hopes to accomplish and what he feels are important that would be the reason that I would support Dennis Perry.
Director Behringer.
Oh, I had my art.
Is there further discussion?
We did get some discussion. He did have a chance to ask him questions at the last meeting. I'm satisfied with that.
Then it sounds like I'm going to call the question for appointing Dennis Perry to the Board of Directors. Motion made by President Rice, seconded by Vice President Farmer.
President Rice?
Yes.
Vice President Farmer?
Yes.
Director Wharton?
No.
Director Behringer?
No.
Thank you. Excuse me, please. I really appreciate it if everybody would be respectful of the fact that this is a meeting.
I would be willing to make a
Director
motion.
Behringer.
I move that we call for a special election next year to get the two candidates that we both support and have them run.
I'll comment before
there
I
a
second. I second the motion with the comment that these two candidates, and even with Karen Dean receiving some support in the emails in the community involvement towards comments towards me, that I just lost it. Anyways, no, I support that because the majority were for Tom Gray, Dwayne Lee, Karen Dean.
Karen can run. Sure.
And
anybody can run.
Anybody
Yeah.
could run.
So,
but I second the motion.
I'd like to speak to the motion. A couple of meetings ago, somebody called me a coward. I think we're abdicating our responsibility as a board, a responsibility that we made when we took our oath of office to represent this community. Because you can't see your way clear to one applicant and your only option is an applicant that clearly will end in a tie every time we vote. Your refusal to even nominate somebody else says that your level and ability to compromise on an issue. I am not saying I do not live in a glass house. I also am not throwing stones. What I'm saying is we need to be grown-ups and take responsibility for this community and select one of these people who has in good faith applied, and I think it's up to us to at least go and the 7 people that each of us, at least one person put this person on their list. The fact that says that we would vote for that person and yet you won't nominate them. If you want a stalemate so that it's forced to an election, I just think that that's going to not speak very well of this board in general and this community that the 4 of us are unwilling to compromise, and I don't mean compromise on either Mr. Lee or Mr. Gray. I mean compromise by selecting a candidate that each of us can get behind. Nobody is going to be the perfect selection, but I would submit that if we have a board of 4 until June, that's also not an option that is very smart either. We have many, many important decisions coming up, and if we deadlock at 2-2 on items between now and whenever the election would be held, that doesn't move our permitting forward either. It also means that when we have our meeting and vote for officers, you want a 2-2 tie, guess what? I get to stay president. So you can either compromise today on a candidate that you can live with, or you will have Vice President Farmer and I for the next year, and we will be having meetings later in the afternoon because I have a job, and so does Director Farmer. It's kind of up to you. I don't want to play politics. I want to appoint somebody to this board that each of us can live with. And I think Director Wharton and Director Behringer that it is the coward's way out to declare an election.
I agree, but is it only Director Wharton or myself that can possibly select someone that they don't like?
So far, you have been the 2 who have said you would only nominate Mr. Gray.
I'm taking a point from Steve Niffen. I wanted when Steve got up last time and he says, I want this to go to an election. I'm respecting his desire, and he's very, very popular and would have been a great compromise candidate. And the very first person I ever nominated was Peter Chaldecott, and no one, for some reason, could give me a reason why he wouldn't have been, other than the fact he supported the project. And if you think that the project is not in jeopardy by this particular vote or nomination, I'm an old man. I could pass away. Mr. Wharton, he could drive too fast. I don't know. But it's not a certainty. And to try and move this board away from dead certain things that you, President Rice, support and have supported, but for a personal bias of some kind that you think that Mr. Gray is going to be a lightning rod, and maybe he is a lightning rod to a few. But other than that one objection where you think it's a lightning rod and not popular, you refuse to compromise and select Tom Gray.
If we were to...
Director Wharton.
Thank you. If we were to just take the title of this meeting, appointment of the vacancy to fill Greg Sanders' seat, off and just call it Project A or Project B, and we were to solicit public comment, do we not as a board listen to public comment or public, however that is delivered? Do we not? Or do we not? Because I listen to what the public has to say, whether it's for or against a project. And if I hear an overwhelming support for yay or nay on a project, that is going to weigh heavily, as well as further discussion that we have on the board. For me, I don't want to have to vote for somebody that I feel, and it's been demonstrated to me that it has less support than one project has less support over the other. If we were just to look at it as a blank slate like that, we take public comment, whether that's an email, whether that's at the farmer's market, or whether that's a phone call. And if 90% of the public said something like, you need to, we don't support whatever this project is, and I voted for that, that's not me representing the entire community. That's me representing 10% of the community. We need, that's why I support one candidate. That's why I will nominate one candidate. That's why I will vote for one candidate.
Vice President Farmer, do you mind if I really quickly respond and then? Which way is the wind blowing? Let's find out by listening to the emails and the public comments. Isn't that what you said you didn't like about Mr. Lee?
No, I said his comments and his stance on the EWS and SWF. For me to, or for any of us not to listen to what the public has to say, we're not doing our job as a director. We represent the community, do we not? And if there is overwhelming support, whether, again, it was a grassroots, organized, or however these emails were prompted to come to us. In fact, I'm pretty astonished at he sent out an email, Tom Gray sent out an email with his support. If you want to support me, these are my stances on all the issues. Go ahead, feel free, please email. A lot of people did.
Okay.
About 60 to 40. And even if we took that, and then the Dwayne Lee, it was Dwayne Lee or Karen Dean. That's who we support. So you could take that 40 and divide that, however that parsed out.
Thank you.
That is why I know we're not going to come to a conclusion today, I don't think, because I need to support, I'm representing what I feel has the greatest support in the community, those members that reached out to me.
Vice President Farmer, and then Director Berenger.
Number one, to make a decision on who should be the next board member on emails that were received, because at least one, if not, let me put it this way. Let's say that Mr. Lee and Mr. Gray spoke to their supporters and said, send in emails. I think the fact that the other gentlemen who ran, who may not have who have put their names in, don't have the name recognition, should therefore be dismissed. This is not a popularity contest. People do not know. In fact, let me say this. And of all the people on this list, if you were to ask, well, who's the most well-known person in this community on this list, it's Steve Niffen. And if that's the case, then why didn't you put Steve Niffen's name up for nomination?
It was only for further questions. I would have had no need to talk to Steve. Steve gave his introductory remarks. I know that it's difficult for him to talk.
Well,
and I didn't know.
Wait. Time out. Do we have a motion on the floor still? Thank you for Dennis Perry. So I'm trying to bring us back.
Dennis Perry. No,
right?
wait, no. This is no. We already voted against that. This is now whether we have it. I made a motion to have a special election.
Thank you.
Was seconded by Mr. Wharton.
Vice President Farmer? Did you have something on the motion to have an election? Your light was on.
That's just a mere coincidence.
Okay.
But to have
So
an election,
then I call
I'm just
the
going to
question.
follow. I'm just going to follow up on what you said, Madam President. That just putting this further down the road is abdicating our responsibility as representatives of this community, plain and simple.
And
not only
disrespectful.
that, and disrespect. And not only that, we should choose someone on this list right now. They will serve until the next election, and so be it. And if, let's put it this way. Having someone else on this board will do a better job than having nobody on this board to take this position. So I'm going to humbly request that Directors Wharton and Beringer choose someone from their list. You felt enough about them to put their name down. They might not be your first choice, but compromise is often, the result of people that are thoughtful and deliberative and consider, well, what's the best way to approach an issue? And for what it's worth, today the moon is in the sign of Libra, and Libra is about compromise and coming to an agreement that is satisfactory to both sides. And I am going to encourage that we pursue that way of dealing with this issue as opposed to a special election months from now. We owe it to the community.
I just have one more thing to say, and then we can take a vote on the motion. Director Wharton characterized this as A versus B. Well, this isn't a two-option choice. We've got 12 people who applied. We don't have only Mr. Lee or only Mr. Gray to select from, which means that in order to be respectful both to the community and to those folks who applied for this position, I think it's incredibly short-sighted in terms of what this board does to just straight out, well, since I can't have my guy, that's the end of it, which is why I will continue to nominate people. And if we go through the entire list, we go through the entire list. Call the question. Moved by Director Beringer, seconded by Director Wharton to place this on an election.
Can I comment on that before I call the order?
Yes, please do.
I lost my thought.
Seems to be going around. What did the stars say about that? We seem to all be losing our thoughts.
That was my thought.
All of us did it at least once so far.
If it means anything, I communicated with several members of this community and said that by the way the stars above, the planets above were lined up today, that I was hopefully optimistic, cautious, but hopefully optimistic that we would arrive at placing someone on the board of directors today. That's the mindset I came in with today. Nothing has changed my mind. This is just a minor speed bump that we are encountering, and I have a feeling by the end of this day, we will have someone on this board that, whether you want to call them a compromise candidate or not, will be someone acceptable to all members of this board. That was my heartfelt feeling when I came into this room. That's still how I feel. Thank you.
Okay.
Director Beringer.
Aye.
Director Wharton.
Aye.
Vice President Farmer.
No.
President Rice.
No. I'd like to nominate David Pearson for the vacancy on the board of directors. I see that dies for lack of a second.
Excuse me. I'll second. However, I find it interesting that we are nominating and about to second someone that the other side has chosen.
Called compromise.
However, it's called compromise, and I will say this, so we need a second, right?
Yes.
Okay. Would either of you gentlemen, including Mr. Behringer, who chose Mr. Pearson, would you like to second this nomination?
I have a question to do
No.
to process.
Yeah. Yes, Director Wharton.
We haven't heard we posed 4 questions just to 2 candidates. Are we going into the process of asking Dave Pearson these questions and then?
Dave Pearson was here?
Did he answer the 4, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, never mind.
So, Director Behringer, you chose Mr. Pearson as one of your 3 choices, and now you don't want to second his nomination. Is that it?
You're correct.
Can I ask you why that is?
Did you second the motion? We don't need to have debate if we don't have a second for the motion.
Well, just to move the process along and not get stuck in where we're at right now, I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
And then I'll ask the question. Mr. Behringer, Director Behringer, why is it that you choose not to second an applicant that you proposed?
I proposed for further questions, as you know. I didn't propose Steve Niffen, who I knew that was still going to be eligible to be voted on. Looking at this list of 7 people is going to embarrass the 7 people that we've chosen. There's other people on that list. And I'll ask you a question. Would you vote for Mr. Pearson?
Well, I will let you know after we discuss
There you go.
Mr. Pearson.
So we'll see.
But I still want to know.
I choose not to.
I still.
So I would like to speak to my motion. One of the reasons I made the motion, Director Behringer and Director Farmer, is I thought, hey, maybe there's somebody that one of the 2 directors that we are having a trouble agreeing with, by we I mean Director Farmer and I, and by one of the directors we're disagreeing with, I mean Director Wharton and Director Behringer. Maybe I'll pick one of the people they put on their list. That way we could come to some compromise. I would like to, even without further discussion on this, I would like to call the question on this unless Director Behringer would like to speak further to his.
No.
I
Call the
made the
question if you like.
motion. Yes, Director Farmer seconded. Vice President Farmer seconded. To appoint David Pearson to the vacancy.
President Rice?
Yes.
Vice President Farmer?
Yes.
Director Wharton?
No.
Director Behringer?
No.
This.
Excuse me, please. We have, Director Farmer,
Sorry, my
please.
apologies, my apologies.
We have enough contentiousness up here at the dais. Please don't feed it with your own comments and sound effects. I know it's really tempting and it's very hard sometimes to withhold your reaction, but it would really be helpful for the folks on the board here if you would please just project light and happy and compromise, and maybe we'll get somewhere. So that motion fails because of a tie?
President Rice?
Yes, Director Behringer.
As a sake of an idea, if we could have Mark Harrier address the 4 questions that he wasn't able to address when he was gone, I would suggest that that would be something we could accomplish so that if he were to be nominated, that we could take that person up for consideration.
I think I thought long and hard about this issue, and Mr. Carmel can correct me if I'm not correct on this, but we had the interviews on the 4th, and unfortunately, Mr. Harrier, who I have met with, he did apply the first go-around. And frankly, I thought he had some good things to say, but I do not think that it is appropriate or fair to any of the other people who were here on the 4th to answer those questions from a sequestered room to allow him to answer the questions now that the meeting has been put on TV.
I agree. He has prior knowledge, and that wouldn't be appropriate. And I would agree with that. However, on the application itself, it says that, please be advised that the Cambria Community Services District Board has not yet scheduled a special board meeting to interview the candidates, so his absence should not be counted against him, I don't think.
His absence should not be counted against him, and that's why he's not been eliminated from the list of possible applicants. If you would like to ask him the 4 questions, we can take the time to do that, but you need to nominate him in order to do that, and there needs to be a second to that nomination. And I do not want to have a nomination just to come to another tie vote or have you not vote for it, Mr. Harrier, to join the board after you've made the motion to appoint him. And I'm only saying that not because I want to preclude your right to ask the questions, but because I think that if your intention is not to actually attempt to appoint Mr. Harrier, that it is essentially, no offense to Mr. Harrier, a waste of time to go down that path. That's just my thoughts on it, and I look to other directors if there's a differing opinion from that. I would welcome that. At this point, one of the things that I would like to do is I would like to confirm with Directors Wharton and Behringer that it is your intention today, at this point, without further information, to only support Tom Gray for the opening or have an election. Is that the case? Director Wharton?
Yes. I feel Tom is head and shoulders above the rest of the candidates as far as his institutional knowledge.
So he's the only one you would vote affirmative for?
Right.
Director Behringer? Excuse me.
It's clear that the reluctance of President Rice and Vice President Farmer to disenfranchise the majority of the people that came to the podium and the people that are supporting a candidate, to not compromise their obvious, if I watch the tape, bias against Mr. Tom Gray. It's not. Should we alienate most of the people just to not alienate some of the people? I'm reluctant to, at this time, to move forward, and I suggest we move forward with an election, and I'd like the president to come up with a possible way out of this.
So I'm going to suggest that compromising on a candidate that we have already tied on, that speaks to the fact that this board will not agree on that person, which means that Mr. Lee and Mr. Gray and Mr. Pearson and Mr. Perry are not going to be a compromise. I would also suggest that it is not appropriate, when there are so many options, to suggest the only compromise is for me to change my mind when about one candidate, when there are other candidates that you might feel could be a compromise. You're not willing to even consider anybody except Mr. Gray, when you know that that's not going to be possible based on the comments that have already been made by Vice President Farmer and I. And I think that I have not been trying to convince you past the initial nomination of Mr. Lee, because I thought maybe something had happened in the last week that you might have changed your minds. I think that to not even consider anybody else is a higher level of absolute stubbornness to compromise than it is to suggest that me not changing my mind about one candidate is not compromising. Not going to compromise on this one. This is not a compromise situation on a specific candidate. This is about applicants that we could be nominating and selecting. I don't think it speaks very well of this board for anybody to suggest that we cannot make a selection when we are presented with 12 candidates, many of whom are extremely excellent candidates. They may not be up to the standard that you have for Tom Gray, but I speak from a position of being the president, of coming in first in both of the elections I ran in. So I really, and I have struggled with trying to make the process as fair as possible with public input. And the fact that you won't even consider any of the other applicants is very troubling to me and does not bode well for a four-person board, frankly.
So you're
If I understand correctly, you're saying the only possible vote that you're going to have, unless the person is Tom Gray, is no. Is that true?
I didn't say that. Can we postpone? Can we continue this to our regular meeting? A couple of days from now?
Well, that decision would have to be made by three of you.
Okay.
So you would have to make a motion.
You know, we haven't even been here 2 hours. Can we just move on with the process and hopefully find some
Would you like to
quality
make
of
a motion?
compromise? Would I like to make a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I make a motion that we stay here till at least 4:30 and conclude this process so we can gain the respect of the people of this community, that we can come to some sense of compromise. And I find it, once again, I'm just going to restate what I said earlier, the fact, Mr. Behringer, that you chose somebody, David Pearson, that we, President Rice and myself, nominated and seconded. You had nothing to say about him and then voted against him. You know, that is the height of, I don't, you know, insert noun, adjective, whatever you want to say.
I think it speaks to compromise.
Absurdity. It's absurd that you would do that. And the fact that you are being, I'm just going to call it like it is, man. You are being narrow-minded. You are being stubborn. If you can't get your way, you're just going to take the basketball and go home. I mean, that, you know, that's child's play on a, you know, on an elementary school basketball court. We are grown adults who represent ratepayers of this community that are paying millions of dollars every year to make sure that this district runs right, so we can provide water and sewer and everything else that we're doing. And we're sitting here and can't make a decision on a board member. And we can't do that because you too are resistive to anybody but getting your way, and that's it. You know how this looks to everybody else that's watching this around the county? You know what I mean? I can only imagine what the New Times is going to be writing about this meeting.
Folks,
I'm just
please.
saying. I mean, you know, and it is funny in a way, but it's funny sad. I mean, all of you out there, no matter who you're supporting, okay, whether it's Tom Gray, Dwayne Lee, or anybody else on this list, I mean, I'm not going to ask for a hands up or or an affirmation by word or something, but you must be terribly discouraged by what you're seeing right here, no matter which side you're on. And I'm going to insist that you two grown adults sitting over here re-screw your brain and figure out a different way to pursue this process today. I'm serious. I am
One of the
totally
ways-
serious.
One of the ways we do that is by making a motion to nominate somebody for the vacancy. Director Behringer?
I got a comment that you're making me more reluctant to move forward.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
you're making me more reluctant to move forward. Because Steve Niffen, his wishes were to take it to an election. Let's take it to an election. Obviously, you don't want to do that.
If I,
excuse me, we need to be taking motions on applicants that would like to fill the vacancy. If there are no nominations, then we are going to adjourn to a date certain.
No.
Because,
no.
excuse me. It's like a devil and an angel on my shoulders right now, but not. It's clear to me that we're at an impasse if there's no even consideration for somebody other than Tom Gray, because that's the one compromise that I have stated clearly that I will not make. And I think that Vice President Farmer has also been clear on that. I think that to suggest that we are not willing to compromise when somebody that was on your list, Director Behringer, is somebody that I nominated. That says to me that we're trying to make a compromise here.
And if I could point out that while you're addressing Mr. Behringer on this very important subject, he's texting.
Yes.
If I could just say this, and if I'm out of line and just, you didn't recognize me or anything, but Director Behringer just said that I'm making him feel a certain way. Psych 101. You're making yourself feel that way. I didn't make you feel that way.
Okay, we need to return to a certain level of professional civility here.
I'm embarrassed that you said that after I spoke. Thank
I
you.
think all of us, including those of you out there, could do well to take that admonishment. Director Behringer?
I just want to explain a little bit more why I'm apparently recalcitrant about moving forward with anybody else. Good old, I keep going back to Steve Niffen, how he came up and spoke how powerful the incumbency is for someone to come to an election in November being an incumbent on the board. If we were to compromise on someone, that person would, through the power of incumbency, would be entrenching the fact that some of even your best candidate or our best candidate may not be there. So holding the election early enough is going to give that person who wins that election and only is on this board for 5 meetings, and then the November election will then take place again. What we're doing is we're possibly locking out somebody like Tom Gray or somebody like Dwayne Lee by not, so now we're going to go down the list and find somebody that's going to be an incumbent that may not be, that we're giving them that power by doing so, and for the community to have spoken pretty loudly on the direction of the board. And when they voted for you, President Rice, they voted very clearly on your stance and your positive stance on the plant. You can't go without looking with your eyes wide open that the next person down the line, Greg Sanders, was supported very much by the community, and everybody knew exactly where he stood. We know exactly where Tom Gray stands, and for us to accept second best and have that person on this board for possibly another 3 or 4 years I think that's shirking our responsibility.
That's an interesting point of view. Vice President Farmer?
You know, there's things called, what do they call it, an alternative universe? I feel like I've stepped into that right now. Director Beringer just said that, if I'm quoting him correctly, that the reason President Rice was elected and came in first was because of her positive stance on the plant. Once again, there are so many more important issues that need to be addressed by this board and by this district than this plant that, somewhere in here, I think Mr. Mr. Harrier said in his application, his head's about to explode. Well, that's the way I'm feeling right now. And, but I will keep my calm and keep my cool and just say that if someone that we appoint who can put their name incumbent, put the word incumbent by their name, and therefore have an advantage, well, they have an advantage. But I would say the advantage in 2018 will be, hopefully, a knowledgeable electorate who will make the decisions. Now, granted, some people, yes, like there are certain, let's put it this way, at the last election, and if I'm going on too long, you just remind me, but in the election in 2016, some people got votes, and I would say there's a certain person that probably got votes just because they were the first person on the ballot. Sometimes people vote that way.
Yep.
But I am going to go out on a limb and say that because of the way this process is being, I hesitate to use the word compromised, the way this process is being hijacked by an immature and unreasonable approach.
Please, name calling, please.
I didn't call anybody any names. I'm just saying unreasonable and immature. And I'm saying it. And I'm not saying it because I'm making it up. That's the way it appears to me. And I think if you ask people out here right now, they'd feel the same way, once again, no matter who they are, the supporting. If we nominate someone and they do a creditable job on this board, the people of this community will see that, they will get elected. If we nominate somebody and they don't do a creditable job on this board, they will not get reelected. I think we should leave it up to the electorate, the ratepayers of this community, who are seeing their monies being squandered by a facility that we continue to pursue and continue to talk about ad nauseum when there are so many other important issues. And right now, the most important issue is selecting a new board member.
So I would just ask Director Beringer, you did bring this non-incumbency issue up at the appointment where we chose Director Wharton. You didn't seem to have an objection to choosing him, even though you still had that reservation. So is there something different now?
I don't recall.
Okay.
Just but one comment to...
Yes, please, Director Beringer.
Because you brought it up once again about this plant that we're paying for and it's not in use. I just assumed that you'd like to stop funding anything for that. Am I wrong, Director Farmer? If you had your druthers, you would not spend any more money on that. Is that correct?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because you said that it's well known. Earlier, you said it's well known what my stand is on this facility.
Okay.
I don't recall ever stating anything as a member of this board other than pointing out how much money continues to be spent on this facility. And I do that because I think it's important for the ratepayers to understand what is happening. Because most people out there, they've got their lives, they're raising their children, whatever. They've got other interests.
That wasn't my question.
The majority of...
My question was, if you had your druthers, would you discontinue spending any money on the plant effective today?
Well, let me put it this way. How I feel doesn't matter, because we're continuing to spend money on this plant. And all I try to do is point out to the members of this community what is happening. That's what I have been trying to do since I've been on this board, which wasn't happening before I got on the board. People were not aware of the amount of money, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're spending every month, to the point where right now, this year, we have spent between $1.5 million and $2 million on this facility. It's important for people to know that.
And
I agree.
I would submit that the question that is more relevant than whether we would want to be spending money on this advanced water treatment plant is whether or not we should be, whether we have to be. Because there are some things that it is not an option to not do. It's not an option for us to not provide health care for our employees. It's in their contract. It's not an option to change that expense. Whether we want to spend it, I want them all to have health care. Do I want to spend the money? No. But I want them to have health care. Therefore, we spend the money. I think that asking whether we want to spend the money is less important than knowing whether or not it's something that is an obligation that we do have to see the money continuing to go in that direction. And I would make the observation at this point, before I adjourn this meeting to a date certain, so get your calendars out, I think that it is really instructive for me to recognize that, let's see, we spent 4 hours about on last Monday, and now we've spent about 2 hours today, when we could have been, I don't know, talking to coastal staff, when our staff here, General Manager Gruber, could have been working on our project for the permitting. We've got a meeting coming up next week with the county that he probably could be spending his time on better, instead of sitting here at this meeting where and I'm just going to say, it's not a compromise if you will not select anything but one person. It's a compromise if you're willing to consider other people. I'm willing to consider other people. And if you're not, then you're not. And that puts us at a deadlock. I suspect what happens after this meeting is we will all get more emails, and I encourage the community to contact us by phone and email, because I think that one of the things that's clear here is I'm trying to come to a decision. Other folks on this board seem to be against making a decision. Ms. Madrid?
Can we take a 10-minute break? Cookies?
I move that this meeting be continued to a date certain, which we will determine after we have the motion and the vote.
I would like to agree with Director Behringer, who just suggested that we take a 10-minute break. So considering where we appear to be at this moment in time, why don't we just step away from the dais here, go out, get some fresh air, some sunshine, reflect on how does this look to the members of the audience, the people watching this on TV, and maybe come back after having rethought, and reevaluated where we're at right now, and maybe we'll get fortunate and we can move on with the process of choosing a director today.
So my motion fails for lack of a second. We will take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at would like to call the meeting back to order. Folks, take a seat, please. All right. We have taken a 10-minute break and are back at the dais. We are currently at a stalemate. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion going forward? Director Wharton.
I would like to see if there would be further consideration for Mark Harrier.
Is that a motion to
A
appoint?
motion to, if, I know we didn't get a chance to discuss him because he had plans from months prior to our special meeting.
Right? Is that a motion to appoint?
Motion to appoint Mark Harrier.
Okay, is there a second? Director Berenger.
Yeah, I agree that we didn't get a chance to talk to Mr. Harrier. If we could ask him some questions, I will second it for that effort.
There's been a motion by Director Wharton and a second by Director Berenger to appoint Mark Harrier to the vacancy for the Board of Directors. Further discussion?
With the provides my second, and if it's okay with the maker of the motion, that we get an opportunity for the board to ask any clarifying questions they have for Mark Harrier because he was absent at the last meeting.
I would suggest even limiting it just to his application since maybe have prior knowledge to the 4 questions that we asked.
Well, not ask the standard 4 questions, but at least we could ask them a continuing question as if they were there and made their. In fact, he never even had an opportunity to make his application 3-minute statement. I would like to hear that.
And I think that in the same way that everyone was sequestered for the statements, I think that he puts him at an unfair advantage for having heard everybody else's introductions. I do think that it is appropriate to ask questions related to his application, and if any of the directors want to ask the 4 questions, you can, as long as you're keeping in mind the fact that he probably did watch the meeting. Please, nothing personal, Mr. Harrier. Just keeping in mind that he was not sequestered for the questions.
Okay, I agree with President Rice that that's the case, but I'd like to take a couple of 1 minute at least to take a look, to refresh myself on the application before we call for a vote.
Okay.
If I may direct a question
Yes,
to Mr.
Director
Harrier
Wharton.
on the honor system here. Have you reviewed the meeting?
I did not review the meeting. I do not think that there are any questions.
Could you come to the mic, please? I'm sorry.
I did not review the meeting, but I would be surprised if there were any things discussed that haven't been discussed for the last 30 years, or at least the last several years in this town. So a lot of the issues are similar. So you can question me in any way you want.
I have one quick question.
Director Barron.
On your application, your email address has been redacted. Would you be?
I don't know why.
Because it came out as a public document.
Oh,
and we didn't
okay.
want everybody.
Yes. Do you want to know what it is?
Yes, if you feel free.
Yes, it's A1Cambrian@AOL.com.
And when did you get that?
Whenever AOL started, when it was still.
So, Director Farmer, did you hear that email address?
I did.
All right, thank you. That's one thing that impressed me earlier.
For those of you under the age of 30, the sound effect of the phone modem.
Dial up.
The good old days of the internet and CDs from AOL galore. Vice President Parker.
I just want to make the comment that we did have the advantage of listening to Mr. Harrier when he applied for the opening for Mike Thompson. So even though it's a little bit, down the road there and our memories aren't what they used to be, even if we don't necessarily recall everything that Mr. Harrier said, I think we got an impression as to his thought processes and how his demeanor and that type of thing, which is perhaps as much a part of the process as your opinions and so forth.
All right. Further questions?
Thank you.
I have a question for you on relating to something other than the advanced water treatment plant. What do you think that you would add to this board that would help with some of the either issues or successes that we have going on?
Wow. You have not gotten a big email campaign on my behalf, either for me or against me. And primarily because I don't have a political dog in this hunt. I don't belong to any of the organizations on either side of the equation because, as I've said here at this podium on several occasions, both sides are right. Both sides have value. Both sides need to be heard and acknowledged. So there have been a lot of people. I have some pretty good qualifications, but you have gone through a slew of people, even former board members, who have outstanding qualifications, honorable people all. But clearly qualifications has not been what you are looking for. You are looking for politics. And that's too bad because we have very, very real problems in this town. You mentioned the fires. Well, Santa Rosa and Ventura, they aren't living in a forest. We here are. It is a crucial, fundamental problem that we have, and bickering will not solve it. I would suggest that, yes, you're going to have an election coming up regardless, and something will be decided. Either you'll stay the course or we'll go a new direction. The townspeople will decide on that. But in the meantime, we have things that have to be done. You don't need a political appointee. You already have a Justice Thomas and a Justice Roberts. You already have a Justice Kagan and a Justice Ginsburg. What you need is a Justice Kennedy. You need somebody that's in the middle. I have built my entire life on collaboration, both as a business owner, both in the movie business and the theater business. It's all about collaboration. And I feel that I could see this side, and I could see this side, and I could go, hey, what about this side? And if anything, you will find me open-minded, affable, and willing to compromise, willing to solve our problems instead of making a political point.
So, as a collaborator, what would your approach be seeing the meeting so far today if you were sitting on this board? To put you completely on the spot.
Yeah. It's unnecessary, and it's frankly a waste of our time. I'm emotional about this. What has been happening in this town, at least as long as I've been a part of it over 30 years, is what has been now happening in the country more and more. We've become so politically polarized that whenever conflict happens, we run to keep our support to the farthest reaches of public thought. And as a result, in order to be elected or re-elected, or even to be able to stand at a podium without somebody stamping their feet and pointing their finger at you, any compromise is a deal with the devil, and that just has to stop. We live in paradise. Like everyone in this room, I love this town. Like everybody on this board. Like everybody in this room, I would never do anything to harm this town, but that's exactly what we've spent the last 30 years accusing each other of trying to do, of trying to undermine paradise. Nobody wants that. I love the Fiscalini Ranch, not because it's one of the most beautiful places on earth, not because it shows you what California was like 100, 150 years ago. I love it because it shows this town can agree on something. This town can uniformly get together and agree that that development, kind of development, East-West Ranch development, was wrong. Some heroes stood up, one of them for sure sitting on this board, and fought that. The town agreed with it. It's not what we want. So we can't agree. I would do all that I can to be the guy in the middle.
Vice President Farmer,
Well, I'm,
followed by Director Behringer.
it's not a problem. So, Mr. Harrier, thank you for being here today. I'm glad this has worked out in this regard. I do want to comment on the fact, by the way, you were just talking about saving the ranch. For any of us that were here back in 1992, when the group Friends of the Ranchland was organized to push back and hopefully prevent the development of the what was then at that time known as the Fiscalini Ranch and then the East-West Ranch. It was also a very divisive issue in this town. There were people that had a certain interest in the building of the 270 houses out there and the revenue that it would generate. And then there were others of us who felt that would be an abomination to the natural beauty of that point. Is, we called it the jewel of the Central Coast, because it was the one area of some open space right there in the middle of a community that people could actually go to and enjoy, and the option of that being built upon was just so, we just couldn't comprehend it. But like I said, it was a very divisive issue for a long time, until ultimately, for a variety of reasons, the majority of people, I think, in this community realized that that was what needed to happen. So with regard to your application, one of the things that you state here, and I'm slightly reluctant to bring up the facility, since I've been talking about the fact that other things are more important, but you state here, we can bicker until our heads explode, relitigating the, quoting your words, sustainable water facility, unquote. It costs too much. We were misled. It should be only be used for emergencies. The brine pond is a nightmare, et cetera, but again, it is a waste of time. It is real, it is here, and we have to deal with it. So let me ask you, how do you feel about the fact that we received an emergency permit by the county for an emergency facility for existing customers only and not for growth? And yet, the purpose, as stated in the permit, was quickly, totally rebranded and made a facility for something other than that. How do you feel about the fact that even prior to that, and all of the discussions around desal, that we were told by staff that desal was the least expensive way of having water available for this community, and that off-stream storage was the most expensive? How do you feel about the fact that we were told by members of this board that dust will come out of your tap, pick a month, and therefore we needed this facility? How do you feel about the fact, and actually, I have other things, so I don't want to just overload you with a lot of questions. So far, how do you feel about what I just stated with regard to the fact that we now have this facility? How do you feel about what I just said? And then I'll just ask for a couple of more comments.
Before you begin, we did have a 2-minute limit on responses to the directors at the last meeting, so I just wanted to let you know, and the clock will be on.
Thank you for that. In regards to, I think that was 6 or 7 different questions.
Yeah, he should get 14 minutes to answer.
I would just say that I stated in an application that would be relitigating it. Yes, were mistakes made? Absolutely. Did it morph into something else? Of course it did. Is that brine pond some ugly Rube Goldberg kind of contraption? Unfortunately, yes. Were deadlines missed? Inexcusably so. Yeah, mistakes have been made. But the general notion of whether we need water or not is not even up for debate. We need water in this town. We have since this organization was formed 50 years ago. This, warts and all, is what we have. To walk away from it or slow walk its permit process or pretend it doesn't exist would confirm that we wasted the $13 million that it cost, much more than we should have spent. But we've done it. So we can't walk away from it. That would be criminal. The thing that to do is to do what we're talking about, is to use it as best we can. We can call it sustainable water facility. We could call it emergency water facility. We could call it the Bozo the Clown Memorial Water Facility. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we have a source of water when we need it in the future.
Thank you for that answer. Vice President Farmer.
I don't think anybody made any comment about walking away from it.
I wasn't accusing you of doing that, but I've heard it in the town.
So let me just ask you, as a potential member of this board, how do you feel about the misrepresentation of facts that led up to this facility in the first place?
I think that both sides could be guilty of that accusation, both before this was ever happening and after and during the whole process. I don't think anybody intentionally lied to anyone. I think the fear of growth is real in this town. It has always been sort of the underlying current that we're afraid we're going to lose paradise. But that hasn't happened. We've been hearing for 30 years that, oh, we're going to grow, we're going to grow. Well, we have grown. If you do the math, 1,700 people have come here in the last 30 years additionally. That's about 56 a year. If you do the math, that's about 1% a year, which you can't really call growth. You can kind of call it, a sustainable zero. I look around the room, none of us are in our 20s. And so the median age of this town is my age, about 63. And so 30 years from now, whatever growth we get will be sort of maybe balanced by attrition. To me, that was a thing that preventing water because we fear growth is not a reason to prevent our water supply. And I feel passionately about that. Do I feel passionately that we shouldn't have been lied to about on the other side of it? Yes, I do. I think perhaps there could have been a way to do it cheaper. There could have been a way to do it better. There could have been a way to do it faster. There could have been a way to do it without as much of an imprint from various other governmental agencies. But it doesn't matter at this point. It doesn't matter. We're here. Let's deal with it.
So if Director Barringer would like to ask something of one of the people that he put down.
Why don't you get back to it if you want? I just want to comment that I think it's a mischaracterization for you to say that this community has been lied to. It's a miscommunication, the fact that this was originally designed as a sustainable water facility.
I think he was speaking to his opinion about
okay, and I think
the situation. But
he
I
was
will
saying
let him
fact,
for
and it's
himself.
not.
Were you expressing your view of it?
I don't think that's important. We're discussing Mr. Harrier right now.
Please continue.
So let me just ask you, how do you feel right now since you're a potential member of this board? How do you feel about the fact that it's real, it's here, and we have to deal with it? So how do you feel about the fact that this facility that isn't operating right now has cost the ratepayers of this community between $1.5 million and $2 million this year alone. And as a result, we are essentially unable to do other than minimal repairs and upgrades to water storage and delivery and the wastewater facility, which is essentially our first obligation. And we will be spending money on it in the coming year as well, and not having the funds to address water and wastewater. How do you feel about that? And if you were a director, how would you address that issue? And what do you think would be the best decisions to be made by this board to gain some funds to address water and sewer needs?
Okay.
I have a clarifying question of Director Farmer's question before you answer, if you would please. That'll help me form my opinion. You said out of his application, it's real, it's here, and we have to deal with that. Is that regarding the EWS, SWF facility?
Well, it would appear that way since it's kind of attached to that statement.
Okay. The sentence right before that, let me see if this is where your application applies. We can argue endlessly about whether climate change is man-made or a 1,000-year natural cycle. It's a waste of time. It's real, it is here. Were you referring to climate change at that point or the SWF?
I'm referring to the climate change
Thank
and how, like it or not, we're going to have droughts and fires in this state for the rest of our lives.
Okay, so is the question from Vice President Farmer.
Okay. I think it's a travesty that it has cost as much as it has. I think that that's unfortunate would be too light a term. It's terrible. But what would be worse is to walk away from it and not allow it to finally pay off and pay for itself, both in revenue and in fact, usefulness to our community. Yeah, we have budget problems, and I agree with you, Director Farmer. It's pretty much job one, where pumping stations need to be upgraded. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, and because we provide more services than the rates that we take in, there is a budget gap, and it's added to by monies that's going to try to get that facility up and running. So we do need to solve that budget gap. We could go like we did, took a step the last time you guys had a major vote to not try to acquire another property for a meeting room. I think that was a wise vote. We don't have the money now, no matter 10 years from now, whether it would be a good idea or not. I think we need to prioritize the infrastructure repairs, and we need new revenue. We frankly need new revenue. And the only way we can get it, and let's just drop the bomb, is a gentle lifting of the moratorium. We get 10 housing starts a year, something you, Director Farmer, said you wouldn't want more than that, so let's use 10 as a baseline. We get $350,000 to $400,000 a year from doing that, and we bridge those gaps and we can focus on solving our problems right now before we wait for any revenue from anywhere else. We can't incorporate, we can't quadruple our rates. Really, revenue is an issue as much as budget is. If this country would learn that you need taxes and fiscal discipline, we could balance the budget overnight. Maybe our town could do that. I have much more to say about it.
Thank you. I appreciate your passion, Director Farmer.
I don't mean, I feel like Al Franken.
I can handle it.
It's a joke. But I feel like, those Congress people that are, to quote somebody on this board, grilling.
It's important.
So you were talking about if we issued, 10 to serve letters a year and regenerate, let's say, between $300,000 and $400,000.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sure you're aware of the fact that just paying off this facility, buying it back from the bank, is $660,000 a year, and the maintenance and upkeep of it is still undetermined.
So are you?
So what I'm saying, what I'm saying is that at the end of 20 years, we build X number of houses. Those houses are here. All we've done with this facility is generate, hopefully, enough revenue to keep it running and purchase it back from the bank. But we still don't have the revenue to address water and wastewater needs. That's the conundrum that we're in right now.
Doing nothing is not an option.
Doing nothing is not an option. I'm reminded of that saying.
Also, I'd like to say, since you asked me a question, we would have, at the end of 10 years, was that the thing you said, 10 years was your thing? We would have 100?
I didn't use a year
I
amount.
thought. We'd have 100 new houses
did,
in
maybe.
this town 10 years from now. Since those people on that waiting list bought them when they were in their 30s and 40s, they're in their 50s and 60s now. So they are empty nesters or almost so. So the residents of those new houses being built, finally people building on their lots after 20, 25 years, would be 2 to 3 people a lot. That's 30 people a year. That does not kill us in any way. A weekend at the lodge during Christmas season has more of an impact on our lifestyle than 30 new residents a year. But whether it's adequate enough, and maybe you suggest we should have 30 or 40 housing starts a year to bridge the budget gap.
Okay. You know,
But it would be money that we don't have, money that we need.
you know, I have a feeling that perhaps pursuing this line of questioning and answering isn't necessarily going to come to any kind of conclusion.
No, it's clarified my position for you, though, and I
It
think
has.
it's important for the town and for
Yeah.
you to know where I stand.
Okay. Let me just state this. Addressing the water and sewer needs of this community is, from my perspective, what needs to be done.
And I would
And
agree
right-
with that.
And right now, we don't have the monies to do that. And it's rather distressing.
Yes, it is.
And there doesn't appear at this moment to be a way out of this conundrum for reasons that I've already expressed. If you do get elected to this board, perhaps you'll have some aha moment and you can come up with some satisfactory way of dealing with the problem that none of us have. Thank you.
Director Wharton, would you like to speak to your motion?
Before he does, I would just like to point out to Director Farmer that I didn't realize it was a qualification, but I am a Libra.
I don't know, it might be too much sense of humor on the board if we had two people like Director Wharton. Let's all please quiet down for Director Wharton.
Well, my stance on the EWS, SWF, however we want to refer it to, is well known, documented. We need to move on to a coastal development permit, and is that something, if you were appointed to the board, that you would pursue?
Absolutely. As I stated, and I will restate, we have to finish it and make it useful. The town needs it no matter how we got to it and how ugly that process was and continues to be. It is our solution.
And I also like how you had, just going to make some points out from your application. Complete the permit process so we don't waste the $13 million to solution. To have the extra source of water this town has needed for the last 50 years. A gentle lifting of the moratorium, I agree with. Aggressively removing dead trees and debris from our forests. That is more than evident now after this weekend when we were didn't have marine layer, but we had smoke layer from a fire 150 miles away to our south.
It's our most serious problem.
Just wanted to point those out. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, then we have a motion on the table. Thank you. You can stay or sit down. It's up to you. We have a motion on the table. Director Wharton moved to appoint Mark Harrier to the vacancy, and Director Behringer seconded. If there's no further discussion, we can have a roll call vote, please.
Director Wharton?
Yes.
Director Behringer?
Pass.
Director Farmer?
Can I get some clarification on passing on a vote?
Are you abstaining from vote?
I'd like to pass.
We don't really have a process for pass.
Is it in any policy that I have to be the second to?
No,
The se-
the policy is that the president's the last to vote.
Joe Montana
is.
passes.
It is. It is. I was just trying to make it unanimous. Yes.
Vice President Farmer?
I'd like to preface my what I'm about to say right now with the fact that while I'm going to say no, I have no problem with if, in fact, Mr. Harrier isn't nominated at this point, that we can revisit his name again before this day is out. But for right now, I'm saying no.
President Rice?
No.
Okay, so before...
Vice President Farmer?
Thank you very much. My apologies if it appears I am doing way too much talking than I should be. I'm going to make an observation that when we chose a director last time, and we had 2-2 votes, and ultimately there was a compromise. And the person that Director Behringer and the person and Director Sanders promoted and voted for was appointed to the board. And I feel like in a sense, I would appreciate the opportunity to choose one of the applicants that we stated. By we, I mean President Rice and myself, that this particular person be considered, and in the fashion of give and take, of being, let's say, respectful to the process and saying, okay, we allowed your nominee to be appointed to the board, and give some consideration to our nominee being appointed to the board to create a sense of balance on the board, which really hasn't existed in my memory, and yet I feel would be something that would create a greater sense of trust with regard to the community, and I think a greater sense of, I know one thing, I would feel much more comfortable with that. If someone that we, now, since, well, I've already explained it. So what I would like to do, if it's possible, is nominate Karen Dean for the position of director.
Director Wharton, did you have a comment?
In response to Vice President Farmer's statement, it's compromise only if it's for our candidate. And it's been pointed out that I should owe Amanda a vote for appointing me here. Isn't that the exact definition of being in somebody's pocket and not an individual thinker? That question was posed to me from a member of the community. So to think that I owe a vote to President Rice it's I can't even think of the words to describe it. It's disrespectful to the process, to use a kind of term as possible. So again, is it compromise only if it's for our candidate?
So there's a motion on the floor, and I would second that motion to appoint Karen Dean to the board. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Before I do that,
Can we please speak to the motion that's on the floor? Mr. Wharton, thank you.
yes, Karen Dean. I was fortunate enough to meet Karen Dean during the election of 2016. A group of us had gathered at President Rice's home, and we were discussing who would be, really good candidates for office. And Ms. Dean, although she wasn't really, how could I say it, in the mood at that time to be involved in the process, she impressed me with her commitment to this community, with her level-headed thinking, with just the genuinely caring person that she is. And therefore, I asked her if she would be my campaign manager. And she was one of the individuals who was most helpful to me in being elected to this board. And of course, many people have asked me since then, Harry, are you glad you were elected? I'm glad to be serving this community, all the people of this community. And I'm grateful to Karen Dean that she was very implemental in that taking place. Karen has been interested in issues regarding the CCSD since her and her husband moved here 5 years ago. She's very knowledgeable regarding the issues and the problems that are being faced by this district. So much so that at one point she sent an email to General Manager Gruber, and he was impressed enough by her questions and her concerns that he actually agreed to meet with her and her husband. So he and Engineer Greshens and Karen and her husband Alan and myself, we met together. I think we talked for, it was somewhere between 1 and 2 hours. It was a very thoughtful, thought-provoking discussion. And my sense of it is, if you asked General Manager Gruber, he would say that he came away impressed with the passion and the thoughtfulness with which Ms. Dean discussed the issues at that meeting. Ms. Dean attends the meetings. Meetings that she doesn't attend, or even once she does attend, she'll watch them again on the public channel to be as informed as possible. I have found Karen to be, like I say, a thoughtful, deliberative individual who I believe would bring genuine balance to this board. And by bringing balance to this board, would bring a greater sense of trust from the community for how decisions are being made on this board, how information is being dispensed by this board. As been said here, there's many people that are well qualified to fill this position. The two people that I know that in my humble estimation are most qualified are Dwayne Lee and Karen Dean. They're the two people that I chose. And I'll just say this, in knowing Karen, in the brief time that I've known her, I have a deep affection for her and her love of this community. And I feel that she would make an excellent director. Thank you.
As the persevering one and only woman on this board currently, I was disappointed that both times we had only one woman apply for the opening. So all you women out there, I see you. Because I know you all are dedicated. Karen Dean has persevered through several years of learning on her own to try and figure out what's going on with the district and where things are right and where they need to be fixed. Took me a fairly strong arm twisting to get her to apply the first time, something I didn't have to do the second time. Because I believe that she is committed to doing right by this community. Mud wrestling, I don't know, are you good at it? Okay, that's good, because I don't do mud wrestling either. I think it's important that she can pay attention to process, which is something this board sorely has been missing. And I think that she would be an excellent director. I won't say that it's her gender that prevents people from voting for her who are on this dais right now. And I certainly wouldn't consider that her main qualifying feature. Just so happens she's a woman. I only raise it because I've got my eye on you women out there. Somebody else needs to be running for this position also when we get here in November. All that's as a prelude to the vote. I don't see Director Wharton or Director Behringer's lights on. Mr. Carmel, can you please speak to, because before we take this vote, I want to make sure that we're clear. If we end up deciding to go to an election, can you tell us what the process would have to be and when that person would have to be running for re-election, et cetera?
If you wanted to hold a special election, first of all, it couldn't be done today because it's not on the agenda. I was going to treat that motion as direction to bring back the appropriate resolutions that are required to start the election process. In this case, first of all, it would have to take place before the 30th, which, as you know, is the last day you can appoint or call an election. That election would take place on June 5th. It would be consolidated with the other elections. It's estimated to cost between $10,000 and $20,000. And the person that's elected at that election would serve out the remainder of Mr. Sanders' term. So they would serve until November of 2020. Again, the rest of this process is if you don't appoint or call an election prior to the 30th, it defaults to the Board of Supervisors. They then have the same opportunity to either appoint or call an election. If they fail to do either, it defaults to an election. You have to call it. So that's basically the process. And again, there has to be a 130-day interval between when you call the election and the election. So if it's pushed, I haven't actually done the calculations, but if it's pushed too far, you may lose the window of the 5th, and it may push all the way out to November. I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
I think we're within that. So even if the Board of Supervisors doesn't act, you'd still have an opportunity to call an election.
So the reason I asked for that explanation now before we take this vote is I would hope that we are not going to have to go to election. I'm not sure that that is going to happen, but that being said, I have to say that one of the most important things that all of us here recognize is we need somebody who knows how to be cordial and talk with no matter who it is that we are talking to in the community, whether they agree with us or not. And one of the things that I know about Ms. Dean is that she pays attention to detail, and she can talk to anybody. I'm sure she's one of those folks, don't mind this accusation. She gets in an elevator and will start up a conversation with a stranger, I suspect. And I think that's the kind of person we need on the board, somebody that's willing to talk to strangers, because she's just curious. She wants to find out what's the answer. She reserves her judgment until after she has the information. And I think that's something that I'm looking for in a board member. Vice President Farmer?
I'd just like to add to what you just said, President Rice, that Karen's the type of person who asks questions and always wants to know more that she needs to know. And is also someone who, as a member of the board, would not only be knowledgeable and use that knowledge in decision-making, but provide, like I say, more information that the community needs to know. And so much about what we need to do right now with this board, especially with the way today's meeting is going, is to cultivate more trust and respect for the board. And Karen Dean would certainly be a person that would do that.
Director Wharton?
President Rice stated that Karen has a natural curiosity, if you will, for issues. I'm kind of dumbfounded on how, especially after the last meeting, I'm scratching my head. Why hasn't Karen Dean contacted me? Why hasn't Dwayne Lee contacted me to state in a one-on-one or to find out what my positions are, what we could do to come to a compromise? That to me, I don't know. It's just I don't know why. So if it's that important for them, why don't they contact all the directors? I know they probably contacted you, Vice President Farmer, Vice President Rice. I don't know if she's contacted you, Director Behringer, but she hasn't. So I don't have anything to go other than what's on this piece of paper and the questions and the answers. And
would you like to ask her that question?
I don't know if it's going to do anything at this point. We're at 3 o'clock, and this should have been, if as a candidate, I reached out to everybody on the board, or a possible appointee. I reached out to everybody on the board and spoke with you. Some shorter and some longer. I think that this should have been taken care of before today and before the last hour.
And allowing her to answer that question might tell you something about that.
It was just more of a observation on my vote.
Okay. Director Behringer?
I agree that Ms. Dean is interested in talks and so on and so forth. But, she listens. My biggest concern really is her strong support for Director Farmer and being his campaign manager. I know where Director Farmer is coming from as far as the SWF, EWF, whatever. I think that we're faced with a board that must move forward. We can't be one that is vacillating in any way. We can't be another Los Osos. We could bankrupt ourselves if we don't take a strong stand. I know
Would you like to ask her a question about that?
No, I don't have any questions for her.
Then,
I'm trying to. I will not support Karen Dean.
All right. Vice President Farmer, did you have something else? Otherwise, I'm going to call the question.
Let's go ahead and call the question.
Motion by Vice President Farmer. No, was it me? I can't say.
Are
you sure?
It was I, yes.
Thank
it was
you.
I.
But I seconded.
All four of
Thank
them.
you. Thank you, Monique. Thank goodness you're here.
Vice President Farmer?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye.
Director Behringer?
No.
Director Wharton?
No.
May I ask the
Director Berenger.
a question of legal
Yeah.
counsel?
Please.
Could we do two things at once? Could we adjourn to a date certain and have on the agenda item 3A or whatever it is? So if for some reason we wanted to renominate any of these people, if somebody had a change of heart and they wanted to save the community $15,000 or $18,000 for a special meeting, and at the same have an item 3B that allows us to call for an election if that's what it is. And I think doing those two things will give us another possibility to think for another day or two and make something like that happen.
Would
What are
we
your
have
thoughts?
to continue this meeting or
Continue this
start a
meeting?
new meeting?
And add something? Can we do the two, or what?
Well, if we're going to change the agenda, we'd want to just do a separate special meeting. But absolutely, those are your two options, and it's probably smart to preserve both of those options.
Well, the reason I'm wanting to continue this meeting to a date certain is it's going to make it a lot shorter. If we have more people coming up and, in other words, the public comment will have been completed, it's just, I think it's a philosophical difference we all already understand.
I see.
So if we continue that, and then maybe have another special meeting on the same day, an hour later, or something, so that we can address, if we come to a standstill, that we could make a vote for a special election.
I don't know that you have to be that formal, but if that's what you want, in other words, you could, without necessarily continuing the meeting, the only risk is you're going to have to open it up to public comment, and you will anyway on the second item if you get there. You can limit it to where you are right now with a special meeting agenda. It's sort of a formality to adjourn it. And I would pick a date certain because you don't have much time left.
Right.
No.
I would
available
submit,
Christmas Day.
that I think it's important to get the public's comment whenever we are making a decision, especially a really important one. And I wouldn't want to preclude that, so that my instinct, even though I kind of feel in my gut, I'd rather not have to manage a whole bunch of public comment that we've heard before. I think it's important that we do that. I think that's part of our job as a public body to make sure
Okay,
that.
I agree with that too.
So if
We're
you
gonna
don't
have
object.
a regular meeting on the 14th. Do we want to add it to the
So wait,
end of
we
that?
need to have a motion
Okay,
to
I
either,
move- I
do you
make-
want to adjourn or do you want to continue?
I move that we continue to a date certain this meeting. Could fail for lack of a second. Okay,
Is there a
Wait.
second?
okay.
Nope.
No, okay.
I think I'm not clear on the motion. Are you moving to continue this meeting, but correct me if I'm wrong, we would be able to, or we would not be able to add anything to the agenda? If we continue it, we can't, right?
If you're making this an adjourned special meeting, you wouldn't be able to. I'm suggesting you just pick a date and we start the process over with a special meeting notice that has
Okay.
both of those agenda items.
Okay, I agree.
Is that agree?
That's agreeable to me.
So moved by Director Berenger, and I second that. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I'd like to come up with a date, if possible.
Okay.
I mean, we have
Are you
a meeting on the
thinking
14th.
Yeah, that meeting is
No,
already
oh, that's really,
long.
really long. The
That one's already
15th
in danger of.
is Friday. We can do it on a Saturday or a Sunday.
I don't know, do you charge weekend rates, Mr. Carmel?
The 18th. The
I
18th.
reduced my rates on
You
weekends.
know,
We can take it out of Director Berenger's pocket.
So Monday,
Out of my
and
Social
Mondays,
Security.
and Monday, I know, I don't want to do another Monday. We've accommodated, because Director Farmer has accommodated Monday's
Too
schedule.
many times.
Yeah.
And Director Farmer, do you have a suggested date? Maybe I'd like to be flexible on your schedule.
Yeah, today.
Except
That
for
we-
today.
How, is Friday bad for everybody, Friday the 15th? Then if we have any items we need to continue from Thursday,
It is a scheduled day off.
scheduled day off. That's,
I
think our
mean,
people are
the
scheduled.
staff is supposed to be able to
Yeah,
provide services
okay.
to us, so it's not that big a deal, but I just wanted that to be part of, we need to be aware that it is
It should
a
not be
scheduled day
a
off.
variable that would allow us not to have a date on. It is our day off, but that should not preclude us from having.
Exactly the point that I was making. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
Madam
Brewer.
President.
Right, and if there's something, if our
I just wanted to
meeting,
make sure we're aware that it is.
especially if our meeting on the 14th is really a jam-packed agenda, we could address a couple of things that day too. Perhaps, I don't know.
How does the 15th look? Is it available?
It's the day of the farmer's market.
We still have farmer's market in here, and it looks like public health clinic is in here as well.
Okay.
They're in the living room and the dining room, but that should be okay.
Madam President, not that it matters, but I would only be available in the morning on Friday.
Okay.
We could do it in the morning.
No, I can't. I can't.
You can't,
in the
okay.
morning because we have.
May I suggest next Tuesday?
Yes. Yes, that sounds like a good idea to me, but I don't know where we are.
Next Tuesday is
Tuesday
now the 18th, 19th. I'm available on the 19th. It's just a few days before Christmas, so next week, that would work for me.
The 19th. Director Farmer, Tuesday, the 19th.
What's this?
I know your preference is today. Would you be able to attend a meeting on the 19th if we were to have one?
Let me say this.
Director Wharton?
While he's looking up,
Yeah.
Director Wharton works all day on Tuesdays.
I can be flexible with my day, and I can switch my work day to the Wednesday.
Oh, cool.
That would be helpful.
As Vice President Farmer directed, Tuesday is preferable for me to work on, but I can move that around.
Thank you, appreciate that.
So if nobody minds, I'm just going to propose this thought. What makes us think that we are going to move to another date and have a different outcome? I don't see it. I see the resistance of, and somebody will say, well, gee, it's both sides. The fact that there are certain directors on this board that wouldn't even support a person that they chose, that we offered, President Rice and I, offered as a compromise candidate, that the person that selected that person for this process couldn't even choose them? Just that reality alone doesn't bode well to me that we'll ever get anybody on this list. That's what I'm observing. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel that we owe it to the community to stay at this meeting. I mean, the last one was 6 hours. This one's barely 3 hours. You know, hey, I'm raring to go. We need to stay here, pursue this process. We owe it to the town. We've got 6 candidates right here. And, personally, I'm willing to offer up David Pearson again, just like President Rice is. Director Behringer's one of his choices, David Pearson. I'm willing to put him up there again and ask for some deliberation. We didn't even, there wasn't, I know that's not what the point is, but I'm just saying, we should be given the opportunity to question. I mean, there were no questions of Karen Dean after stating her qualifications, so that's how I feel.
I appreciate that opinion. Because we cannot call an election, even if we would need to, because of the way that the agenda is, can you please see if you're available on the 19th? We still have to vote. This is not a foregone conclusion. We have to just determine. I do not want to hold a meeting on a date when you cannot come, because the reality is, even if we were to stay here until midnight tonight, we may come to the point where we determine that the only way forward is an election, which we cannot do today, no matter how long we stay. And I know that you want to see a different outcome. Can you just look and see if you're available on the 19th?
I am available on that day until 4 o'clock.
Thank you.
So that's the motion. Did we have a second?
Yes, I
For the
seconded.
19th? Okay. Then maybe we can call the question.
Is it available on the 19th? So I think we call the question.
Can District Clerk restate the question, please?
Move to hold another special meeting with a date certain to address the two items, 3A and 3B. President Rice seconded the motion.
With an additional item of calling, the potential of
able to
calling
call
an
an
election. Yeah,
election.
okay.
Wasn't that
Yes.
3B?
Yeah, that would be 3B then,
Okay.
I suppose. Yeah.
And can I clarify something?
Yes, please.
Did you want staff to prepare the necessary resolution so that you could actually take action on 3B, which would be a series of resolutions calling for the election and agreeing to pay for it?
I think we need to be prepared for that.
I'm hoping we can avoid it.
Thank you.
I don't want, yeah, whether we go that way is, so we don't have a time set, and Harry said he's available till 4, so can we do it at 12?
12 would be fine for me.
If you are an applicant and happen to have your calendar, raise your hand if you would not be available on the 19th to come to a meeting. Okay, I'm seeing no hands. I know I said the negative, so I just want to make sure that folks can be here if they want to be here for that date. Okay. I think we can call the question. Are you clear on the motion? Sorry, Vice President Farmer.
I'm clear on the motion that we've been here for 3 hours and for some reason we've got to do another meeting. I'm clear on that.
Okay, thank you.
Director Berenger?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Vice President Farmer?
How do I state it? Absolutely not.
So the motion passes 3-1. Director Farmer dissenting. We are adjourned for today.
I would like to make a comment. I think we have abdicated our responsibility to the ratepayers of this community. Not yet. Today, we have abdicated our responsibility to the ratepayers of this community to come to some sense of conclusion, some sense of compromise, to regain trust and not make us a laughingstock. That's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Director Wharton.
After a break, we did have a compromise, an additional candidate that appeared on one of our lists.
Well, we're
We're too late past
adjourned
that.
for today, yeah.
I just wanted to, never mind.
Too late, babe.